He faded into consciousness. There was an amazing sensation, a sucking sound as he considered things. He couldn't open his eyes. A wonderful warm weight was on them, on his hands, on his everything. His mind was groggy and disjointed. He had... yes. He had been sent to pokey at the arrangement systems, talk to a guard while technically on their property. Things got fuzzy and a deep throaty moan draws him further out of his myriad of confusion. He flexes his hands and needs whatever it is that's pinning him down. There are more moans and he tries to push through the haze. His brain is working like jammed clockwork. There's a last little something stopping him from putting things together. There's a bouncing sensation, and he can feel his numb body react, and he gives a small thrash to try and loosen himself. A huge amount of the weights back away, and he comes face to face with the pitch-black, elongated skull of an alien monster with puffy red lips. The creature Frenches him as his eyes widen, and the sheer panic causes a crash of adrenaline that blasts through whatever drugs in his system. He lets out a scream of horror and thrashes upright. He's buck naked and surrounded by a kittenous and massively titted and assed alien women. No noses, no eyes, just black hard shell, spiny protrusions along the back, multiple arms, enormous blades on the tips of their powerful tails, and enormous breasts and rears. A cross between an unimaginable nightmare and a wet dream. Oh, fuck no. I've seen the movies. He says still unclear as to what's going on, or how he got here. But that does not bother him. Movement behind him, and he rips at that slight sensation of axiom he was taught to feel. He launches himself into the air and lands with a crouch on the wall, grabbing hard onto it through his feet with the focus and clarity of utter panic. Next to him, a distortion of an armored figure straight out of a parallel horror franchise slowly crackles into view. Oh, hell no! He hurls himself off the wall and clean through the metal door to the chamber, slamming it and its frame clean out of the wall with a shoulder tackle that would lay out a full-grown hippopotamus. Wait, beloved, there is nothing to... Whatever the alien was about to say is utterly lost on him as he blasts down the corridor and skids atop the tile to a stop. There are more of them, a second swarm. The way out is blocked and both hordes are bearing down on him as a black flood of spines and tits. But there is a window. Or rather, there was a window, as he dived clean out of it without a moment's hesitation. The good news is that the glass hasn't reduced him to ground meat. Channeling axiom through the whole body is a boon. The bad news is that he appears to be about 1,000 stories up. The next day, Ambassador Halela was unused to being glared at. The Dazedin were regarded as one of the races around the galaxy that simply aren't to be meddled with. Regarded generally as reasonable but individually dangerous on such a scale that no branch of her species ever bothered with militaries. Civilian populations with their brutal natural weapons, immense natural armor, and utterly effortless stealth and pack tactics ensured that it would take a fierce people to so much as shoot a dirty look at one of her race. Unfortunately for her, the Tret-adjacent species of humanity were apparently fiercer than they appeared, as she can feel her tail slowly filling with axiom. Her hind brain is telling her to be very still and very careful, and that she's got maybe one chance if the older-looking human charges. She can't see his eyes. Her race doesn't have visible eyes, but it's how they can predict the other races. Intent is in the eyes. The tilt of his head as he glares is shadowing his eyes, giving him an almost skull-like look. Is it war, then? He asks after a few more moments, visibly twitching in abject fury as the very desk he's sitting at seems to creak. It's bolted to the floor, but it moves somewhat regardless. What? She asks. This is the first thing he said to her after his secretary, a Lieutenant Colonel Larkin, short, flat, and rail-thin seeming Tret woman without a drop of good humor in her, had hand-delivered the outright demand for this meeting to her office. There had been a quite fury about her, too, as if she was carrying 3 times her body weight in spite and controlled rage. You have grievously assaulted and tormented a member of our military. That is a declaration of war. Soft and flat, his tone may be, the sheer malice dripping off it, sends terrified shivers down her spine. No, I haven't. Assault, kidnapping, enslavement, and rape are all a form of both assault and torment by legal definition. We're an arrangement system. We arrange marriages to any men not performing their proper service to the galaxy, she protests, finding her courage. He is a member of the military in good standing. That is the very definition of performing his proper service, he replies. He then picks up a datapad and the desk, bolted to the floor by standard regulation, lowers as he calmly, oh so calmly, places his other hand on the desk, drumming his fingers forcefully enough that each tap sounds like a stomping boot grinding into the ground and sets her nerves even further on edge. Corporal Herbert Jameson will survive, barely. However, it will take treatments that have so far gone untested on humans for him to ever walk again. He has consented to these treatments and will be entering an axiom-based restorative coma within the next 2 hours. He fell nearly half a kilometer after escaping what he described as... He lifts the datapad up higher, which reveals his eyes in its light as he glares down at the text. A horde of ravenous alien monsters. He places the datapad down. I understand that there are cultural differences between your people and mine, he says, his eyes once more faded, and only his tense body language a hint of his thoughts. She nearly sags in relief as he looks a touch calmer. However, she tenses up again. There are some things I do not understand, he states, and she braces herself. Perhaps you could answer some quick questions regarding them? He asks, and she nods. Of course, she says as she forces the axiom out of her tail to calm down. Things are going fine, and she needs to relax. How, in any form of mental justification, is it not an act of assault to use a tranquilizing axiom technique on a soldier in good standing of a government that you are not at war with? He asks, and she goes still. No answer? Then perhaps you could tell me exactly what you would call forcibly taking an unconscious individual to a location unknown to them for intentions other than healing or personal safety? Because the only word I can find is kidnapping. What do you want? She asks him, and he just glares at her through the shadows over his eyes. If you wanted bloodshed in return for what's happened to your soldier, you would have it. If you wanted massive leverage over the Versi system, you would have announced what has happened. Yet you're speaking to me in person and emphasizing your bargaining position. What do you want? She asks, and he takes a deep breath and smirks. Very good. I was worried I was dealing with a coward, he says, visibly relaxing and pressing a button to summon Philip. Excellent news, sir. I'm glad to see you are making progress. Tea? Coffee? Philip offers from his small trolley, and Ambassador Hlala pauses, then gapes at the men. This was all planned, she realizes. Not all of it. But we did need a thin edge under the door to get some leverage. Is that caffeine? Hlala asks in frustration, pointing to the coffee. Yes, madam. It's an intoxicant for my kind. So, yes. Of course, madam, he says, and quickly both ambassadors have a steaming mug in front of them. What do you want? She asks him, and he takes a sip of his drink. I would have your support in spearheading an amendment to the laws allowing arrangement systems to operate as they do. They are obsessively pedantic with their desire for husbands, Hlala says, putting aside the fact that she too had been obsessive until the point she had gotten married and calmed the hell down. I understand that. However, my proposition will seem to be absolutely harmless, but allow myself and my people a great deal of movement over the galaxy. How? Any man within government service to be exempt from the arrangement laws for the duration of their employment under a legal government, he says, and she pauses and thinks about it. A very narrow slice of the people, and it's crouched in language to let you and all your men on the Dauntless free access to arrangement systems without being held up, she says, and he nods. We would have arrived a week sooner if he hadn't had to go around the hefty conglomeration of arrangement systems, one of which was your own madam, to get to Centris, he says, and she winces a bit. The heavy-handed approach to such thing had been a bit of a boot on immigration, despite the local populations voting massively in favor of the laws every time. In the past, she had voted for the laws herself, but after seeing all the numbers... All right, I'll help you. However, I would like to know something first, she says, and he nods. Why did you soldier panic the way he did? Lodging a protest and raising a huge amount of noise would have gotten you much the same results and allowed this meeting with more than enough political clout to force my hand, yet he nearly killed himself in the escape. That could not have been part of the plan. An unfortunate circumstance, he says with a sigh as he rubs the side of his face in exasperation. I'm unsure if this is just a terrible galactic coincidence or something else, but your own species, the Zedden and the Yaoya, both of which his brides are chosen almost exclusively from, bear an unfortunate resemblance to horror movie monsters. An unstoppable killing machine more akin to an animalistic bioweapon of terror, and the other, an advanced immoral hunter that slaughters people for its own amusement and gain respectively. Those movies are real, she asks, and a look of disgust crosses her face clearly. You've seen them? The Zedin and Yaoya are sworn sister species. I represent quite a few of both on top of being one myself. When something from your ship with races similar to ours was posted all over the net, of course, I took a look. I just don't know how you could get things so wrong and right on both. Wrong is understandable, but you got too close with what you were right on. I'm unsure as well. However, understanding that both the Alien and Predator franchises are very popular horror and action series certainly makes his panicked fleeing of the situation understandable. I would nearly panic at that situation, and my family reunions are larger. The deformed baby ripping its way out of that poor man's chest and scuttling off into the darkness like it's some demonically possessed hellspawn was a front and center theme in a week's worth of nightmares. Then it just got worse, she exclaims before taking a slug of the coffee. It's very hot and the bitterness almost makes her gag, but the caffeine hits her system fast and there's a pleasant blurring of the sensation of horror. Now I'm just baffled. If whatever systems you have in place to arrange who's married had access to this, then it was... Admiral Cistern begins before pausing. Madam Ambassador, do you have any political enemies currently working in your office? Excuse me? The average response from your system is to peacefully detain and introduce my soldier to his would-be brides one after another, in turn. Instead, he was effectively drugged, kidnapped, and raped. You have been reasonable and personable during this meeting. I do not believe that your policies would cause this egregious lack of decorum from your office. Admiral Cistern cuts himself off as Philip walks in with a datapad. I don't even know what happened. I was having a normal day when your message came to me. I've been trying to figure this out myself. Yet you never once tried to deflect responsibility, or I have never been glared at by an individual whose face is naught but a mouth over a reinforced skull. I apologize for the offense I have given. She huffs a sigh and takes a slug of the coffee like it's hard liquor. Ambassador Cistern, I understand that you humans are rather new on the galactic scene, so I will forgive you. However, I must ask you to understand the culture of my people, one of the most, if not the most unifying trait of the Zedin. We are responsible. We are enormously capable in battle and in survival. One's choices, whom you trust, who you bond to. They are all your own responsibility. Someone under my authority knocked out, kidnapped, enslaved, and had your soldier raped. This affected him so badly that he nearly died in his attempt to escape. My subordinate. My fault. Madam, even if our conversation and your proven character had not convinced me to view you favorably, that statement would have. Really? This turn of events is a terribly unfortunate turn for both of us. I had intended to send my lieutenant to secure his release after being delayed. Use that alone as a reason to push these changes. Then the event has happened and cast egg on both our faces, myself for sending a soldier into a horrific situation, and well, it happening due to your underling. I don't appreciate being trapped like this, but if rumors spread, then any stance I take will be tainted. Let us discuss exactly how your proposition shall be brought to the council, she says stately. If it means anything to you, madam, I am sorry. Just bear in mind that even if the marriage is annulled, many of the girls have already imprinted on him, and most who haven't will be trying to make up for what's happened. In other words, your boy is going to be chased by them for a time. I'll let him know, Admiral Cistern says wryly.